My name is Joshua. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria, and it's afternoon here in Nigeria. I hope you're having a good day. And of course, I hope you're enjoying this session since yesterday. This is going to be a very packed one and a very interesting one. Here with me today, I have the panelists, the speakers, with me on this session, which is actually going to focus on digital transformation in the tourist industry. And as we're moving forward, I want to believe that we all know what the sector look like. The tourism industry, in terms of job creation, in terms of support we provide. There are several reports online that shows that for every 10 jobs, one actually comes from the tourism industry. It's a very huge industry, but because of the pandemic, the COVID-19, there are a lot that's happened recently, just from the early part of the year, a lot of restrictions and all that. So where we'll be actually looking into that, how it affects the small businesses, how it affects the ecosystem entirely, and how it affects the job creation. As we move forward, I would like to mention the names of the speakers we have on this call before I call the first speaker. So I have David Goodger, actually the Managing Director of Tourism Economics of Oxford Economics. I also have Yolanda Mionzi, the Government Affairs and Public Policy for South Africa, Google. I have Naledi Khabo, CEO, Africa Tourism Association. And I have Geoffrey Manyara, Economic Affairs Officer, Tourism, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And of course, I have Folorunsho Coker, Director General, Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. And I have Bukky Akomolafe, Country Manager, Travel Star. And of course, I'm Joshua. Like I said earlier, I'm the moderator for this session. So I will move ahead to call on Geoffrey. Geoffrey is actually going to be doing the initial framing of what we'll be focusing on in this session. So Geoffrey, are you welcome?
Hello, hi, good afternoon. So yes, I'm David Goodger. So I am, as announced, the Managing Director of Tourism Economics Division of Oxford Economics. For those of you who don't know us, Oxford Economics are a leading economics consultancy. So I head up our Tourism Economics Division for EMEA, and specifically I would like to focus on the report that we are currently producing in collaboration with Google, and I'd just like to bring up and share a few slides to talk through some of the key findings and recommendations that we are coming at for in this analysis, which is covering a range of markets, but with a focus here, we'd like to look at South Africa and some of the draft results we're getting for some other African nations. So, as mentioned, yes, at Tourism Economics, we focus on the tourism sector, the economic impact, the forecasts of tourism. Forecasts are obviously keeping us very busy right now, huge amount of uncertainty, seeing some unprecedented falls this year in both international and domestic travel activity. This is true for destinations worldwide. It's true for all African destinations. But this may be unprecedented in terms of scale, but we have seen falls in tourism activity before, and we have seen recoveries, and we do believe that this recovery will come again, this time more rapidly for domestic than for international, but there will be recovery. Of course, there's considerable uncertainty, and I feel I've been spending much of this year discussing the downside risks, but today I want to talk about some of the potential upside risks and the way that digital content, digital transformation can really help to drive that recovery and bring about even a faster recovery than we potentially have in that base case scenario. So we've in a lot of our research, we've to date, including this report, including prior reports, we have seen that digital has become a crucial element of travel planning. Digital content, digital platforms form connections between travelers and destinations at all stages of the travel planning process. As travelers start off dreaming of where to go, then get into detailed planning, booking, and then experiencing, they're still interacting with digital content, and then ultimately sharing, which then kickstarts some of the the dreaming again. So digital platforms sit at the heart of all travel activity and can really help to drive this recovery. So within this this research, we have then started off by looking at a historical perspective to understand how much digital content has driven past activity in tourism and the economic contribution of that. So this is then taken from the report looking at South Africa in specific, and we can see that the growth in digital activity in years to 2009 really helped to drive a proportion of the activity, and then the changes in travel activity that we saw to those years, and that helped to drive more travel spending, GDP, and helped jobs through some of the wider impacts of the travel and tourism sector and its interactions with other sectors. And then we'd like to then look to the forecast, look to the future. And we've looked at then what is the best practice for growth in the future. What can all destinations do to come out of this crisis in the best shape? What can be done to drive recovery? And so we've had a lot of conversations with different destinations worldwide, a lot of survey work, a lot of discussions, and we've seen a few key areas of best practice that we've identified. And we do see that digital interactions are really at the heart of this. Some broader changes that need to be adopted. Destinations need to switch to thinking more about management and marketing, not just destination marketing. And within that, really need to look at the digital ecosystem. And by that, we mean adopting digital platforms, making better use of data analytics, and crucially, destinations need to collaborate. It needs to be that collaboration between private sector and public sector, and that to drive that engagement and recovery. And taking some of the specific impacts, how do we get towards that recovery? What recommendations would we make? Well, we can see that there are differences clearly across all different countries, and there are country-specific opportunities and recommendations that we would like to make. When we look at a very broad picture, we can see that online usage is very high across all destinations that we look at, specifically focusing here on South Africa as mentioned. You can see that 81% of travel to South Africa involves some degree of online interactions in planning, but other sections, other sources are used. That intensity, as we've quantified this, is actually relatively low. There is an opportunity to increase to better match what's happening with peers, but crucially what's happening in terms of travelers from source markets. Destinations really need to keep in mind what's happening in the source markets, what the travelers to that destination really want. And then drilling into this, just to give a quick example, you can see that the provision of different information and booking systems for travel to South Africa is, does look pretty high. It does look well relative to what travelers from the mix of source markets want. One area where there is potential concern, clear improvement, is there on social media. So bringing this together, I won't talk through everything that's on all of these slides, but just to talk through some of the key recommendations that we've made, specifically for South Africa, but some of these recommendations are true for other destinations as well. I won't read everything on the slide as mentioned, want to get on to touch to everyone else. But what we've seen is that destinations need to build a consistent brand message with digital collaboration at the key, that collaboration between the destination, the public sector, and the private sector. As already mentioned, public sector can really take a lead in this, in driving and setting an example, as well as delivering some of the changes. An area where we see this is in skills. There should be work to upgrade and expand the digital capabilities and skills. Firstly, raising awareness of the benefits that digital transformation can bring, but also then the public sector should take a lead in developing some of those skills and leading some of the training. In order to do this, we need to ensure that that funding is in place for tourism. As was mentioned by Joshua in the introduction there, yes, tourism is a very important sector for a lot of destinations. Right, 1 in 10 jobs is a widely referenced metric. I know that's one of the metric that does come from some of the research we carry out in collaboration with WTTC, and absolutely tourism needs to be recognized as such, and funding for DMOs, funding for tourism activity needs to be in place as a critical investment that will deliver returns over multiple years. Next, data that's generated by all of online interactions is very important. That should be used to inform activities and understand the needs of travelers. Specifically within South Africa here, there is a need to improve some of the infrastructure to enact some of these recommendations, particularly in some of the rural areas, and the digital infrastructure needs to be in place to meet the needs of businesses first, but also the travelers to be able to interact with platforms within the country. And destinations and businesses throughout the recovery period right now, but even in as we're starting to see growth, they need to continue to tell stories, use the extended reach of digital platforms, notably social media, connect with potential travelers while they're restricted right now, but also as they start to come back to destinations, even if there's address some of the nervousness in and to present your destination in the best possible framework. And finally, be willing to adapt to consumer sensitivities, use the data to understand travel behavior, understand changes in requirements and needs, and then deliver the most appropriate message to reach out to your potential travelers. So ultimately, what does this all mean? Just to bring this to a close, just want to flag up a couple of then the final statistics that we have in the report, that if all of these activities take place and there is some extension in digital interactions, we have then estimated what this actually means, what this upside opportunity would be. So we have then calculated how many additional travelers, how much additional spending could be generated from this digital transformation, in addition to the growth that I presented on the first slide, a growth return above that baseline. And we'll see a multi-year return, as mentioned, for South Africa, coming up to $1.5 billion of additional spending within South Africa over the next 5 years from adopting some of this greater digital transformation. And this spending then leads on to jobs. So this is new job creation that we would see by 2025 in South Africa and across all of the other countries that we are covering within this research. So there is a clear upside potential for destinations from the digital transformation in tourism. So I would like to now pass over to other contributors. I've taken enough of your time for right now.
Yeah, thank you, David. This is actually very insightful presentation. And you've mentioned a couple of things about the role the content platform is actually going to play in this, and of course the digital platform and the entire digital ecosystem as a whole. So what I would like to do is to get kind of a reaction from other speakers, and specifically I will call Bukky, who is the manager at Travel Stack, to speak specifically about what is actually happening, how you're actually using data. I still have a couple of questions to ask about reacting to what David has said, but using data to actually ensure that the entire ecosystem actors could come together to make the travelers and the people who actually are looking forward to the tourism sector opening up make their decision.
Okay, thank you, Joshua, and thank you, David, for a good presentation. I took some notes as you were going through. So as you've mentioned, Joshua, so I'm the country manager of Travel Start, and we are Africa's largest online travel agency. And in Nigeria specifically, we focus on flights. And one of the things that we see is actually one of the points that David mentioned, which is you have to also know what is happening in the source market as well as in the destination that they're going to. And that's where data plays a huge a huge role. For example, if customers are constantly searching for flights to the US, but you're not seeing the bookings to the US, you will know that something off is going on. And when I say off, it could be maybe there are different restrictions, right? What we've seen from COVID-19 is that every country has their own restriction. And so where we used to be able to decide as a consumer where to go based off of, based off where you have a visa, today you are deciding where to go based off of COVID-19 restrictions. This could include quarantine, self-isolation time. And that data for me is incredibly important because it tells us, essentially what destinations we should spend on. We find that the more restrictive the destination is in terms of quarantine, self-isolation requirements for the airlines, the less likely, a customer is going to want to get on the plane and in addition, spend the money, to fulfill all of those requirements to go. So now you're no longer just talking flight and visa, you're thinking flight, visa, COVID-19 tests. If I'm from Nigeria and sitting in Nigeria right now, that's 2 COVID-19 tests when you're coming in, when you're leaving the destination, and then 1 when you get back here. And you're putting all of that into consideration. So those data points are incredibly important to us.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Bukky. I'll move next to Yolanda. At Google, you have a couple of platform that actually help people in terms of connecting. So David mentioned something about digital content helping us to drive the recovery that is required at this time. So would you mind just speaking to that, how the digital platform, the data that we generate, the content will actually help achieve the recovery we are looking at this time?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joshua. And huge thanks to David as well for sharing the insights of the Oxford study. This is a piece of work that we've been working on for the last couple of months, and it's really part of our tourism campaign and the work that we've been doing with governments and DMOs across Africa. And as he mentioned, digital content is super important in the recovery of the tourism sector, but I think also in restoring confidence in travelers. So what we're seeing, for example, at Google is that during the lockdown, where a lot of countries in Africa were in lockdown, so I'm sitting in South Africa, there was a point where travel was completely shut down. But what was interesting, though, from search trends and YouTube trends is that travelers are still looking for travel inspiration. They are still looking for virtual experiences, actually. So it is so important and critical for ministries of tourism, for DMOs, to ensure that content is accessibly available to travelers, to consumers, as they are at home at the moment. And as Bukky said, people are still looking for inspiration, but they're also looking for reassurance that it is safe to travel. So what we've seen as well in our studies internally is that as countries move into the transition stage where, lockdowns are being lifted and travel is slowly opening up, is that as much as travelers want to travel, but they want to be reassured. And how can you do that? By constantly uploading and creating online content that can restore that confidence. So we're seeing a lot of spikes on YouTube and on search trends looking for site tours. But most importantly, we're also seeing people looking for much more secluded, for example, destinations. And I think this information or data is so critical in restoring or recovering the tourism sector, because DMOs and ministries of tourism will know how to market to the new traveler. So what we know for sure is that travelers will look very different pre-COVID-19, and we need to cater to that. So digital content and platforms are critical in restoring, not only recovering, but also restoring confidence, which I think for me is super important now as we open the borders and push for more tourism in our countries.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. And I will take the last reaction before I move into other questions I have today. Geoffrey, I would like to react to what David mentioned about the role of the entire ecosystem actors. So in terms of who is going to be doing what within the ecosystem for the recovery that we all look out for at this time.
Yes, thank you, Joshua, and thank you, David, for the presentation. I hope you can hear me clearly. Yeah, I think David has given very good insight into the IT usage in Africa, using a number of countries, South Africa. I saw examples of Kenya, Rwanda, and so forth. And quite a number of countries now are putting a lot of emphasis on ICT and the digital industry and so forth. And that's something that is really increasingly growing. Just also to mention that prior to the COVID-19 impacts, that under the Program for Infrastructure Development for Africa, that ICT is one of the key sectors that is being looked at. And now more than ever, I think what COVID has taught us is that we really need to build up on these platforms, especially now that when it comes to the tourism industry with its collapse, we've seen that ICT is playing a very, very critical role. And I'm just thinking about the youth, for example, and the use of the platforms. And I've seen social media sites such as I think Snapchat. Sorry, I'm not very familiar with the sites, but I see a lot of youngsters going to sites and taking pictures and sharing them, and that is one of the ways really of promoting tourism. And what we've seen in as a recovery strategy and what we've been promoting actively is domestic tourism. And we're increasingly seeing that these platforms are actually playing a very, very critical role in actually now the recovery of the industry in a number of countries. One of the countries I'll mention where domestic tourism has been quite key is Kenya. And I'm sure South Africa and a number of countries, but I'm actually talking from one of the destinations in Kenya, Naivasha, Lake Naivasha, which is really very busy now, surprisingly because of COVID. But what I'm trying to say is that the digital platform has really been very key. As soon as Kenya opened up its sites, we saw a lot of youth taking pictures of destinations, Masai Mara and so forth, actively promoting them. And this has actually led to a spike in the domestic numbers. So I think the digital platform is very, very key in that sense. And also in addition that it has also brought up more opportunities. I mean, if you look at platforms such as Airbnb, I mean, previously the cost of accommodation used to be very high, but these platforms are now making it more affordable for people to actually travel and and so forth. So this is really a very, very important turn of events in the tourism industry. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Geoffrey. And it's interesting being at Naivasha in Kenya. It's really a great place. But because of what is happening now, it's actually really hard to move around. Yeah, thanks so much for that. And thanks for everyone who has contributed at this time. Now I will move to some of the questions we already have, and I will be back to Yolanda to actually ask a specific question, which we really want to get great insight from you about how the private sector, like Google, that you work with, actually contributing to the recovery of the tourism industry in terms of supporting the recovery of the tourism industry. So I would like to actually speak about that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joshua. So at Google, we really believe that this is a time for innovation and preparedness, right? As much as the tourism sector has taken a slow down, but I think it also warrants us to think creatively in terms of how does tourism look going forward? How can the tourism sector use digital? And as a result, we've struck some partnerships, with DMOs across the continent, as well as the UNWTO, to really drive the digital transformation narrative and story forward. And as Google, we've got a tourism campaign, which really is anchored around 4 or 5 things. One, it's around upskilling tourism businesses, small businesses, as well as the tourism sector as a whole. As I think you mentioned earlier on, that 1 in 10 jobs are created or indirectly created by the tourism sector. We also know that the tourism sector is driven largely by small businesses. But what we are also aware of is that these businesses do not have digital skills. And what we know, as we've been discussing today, is that what's key to the recovery of the tourism sector is digital content. So how can small businesses build a presence online and market themselves online? So what we've done is we've made a pledge to train 500,000 small businesses across Africa on critical digital skills. And a key component of that will be targeted to tourism businesses. We are also, in addition to that, we are also trying to partner with, we are partnering rather, with the Ministry of Tourism to offer virtual experiences. And what we have as Google is a platform called Google Arts and Culture. What this does is that it offers travelers an experience of Kenya, of Rwanda, and in the comfort of their own home. So what we're doing now, we're embarking on different projects to digitize and offer these, experiences, these tourism experiences online. So that's the second pillar of what we're doing. The third is literally what David was speaking about earlier on, which is offering thought leadership and different perspectives when it comes to recovering the tourism sector. So this includes, research, data to support, tourism industries or bodies as they recover the tourism sector. What we were also doing is is around data and insights. So you remember earlier on I was saying that, you know, through our search trends, we are seeing a couple of things, and this information is critical, you know, to the ministries of tourism, to DMOs. So we are sharing information so that these bodies can craft strategies and marketing strategies to recover the tourism sector. So truly, it's a comprehensive campaign that we are embarking on with different organizations and government bodies to truly try and recover the tourism sector and restore confidence. What's for sure is that for us, you know, we are a tech company, so we can only come with our expertise, which is really data, insights, and upskilling businesses in the tourism sector.
Yeah, thank you, Yolanda. Great job you're doing at Google. I'm quite aware of the Google Digital Skills Project going around, and of course the online safety program also, which gives people safe online at this time, and of course about the great work you've done so far with that. Yeah, so to our audience, I would like to mention, I heard that some are actually asking if this session will be made available in a week or so. The session will be made available on YouTube and other platforms. So please look forward to this session being sent to you. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so I will move to Folorunsho, who is actually based in Abuja, Nigeria. I am aware about the great work you're doing in your ministry. The question would be about how government in Africa are actually navigating the tourism recovery issue, and how should digital transformation factor in those efforts. I will take the question again. In terms of earlier, I asked Yolanda about what the private sector is doing. So what we want to know now is how the government in Africa is actually navigating the issue in the tourism sector in terms of the recovery that we all crave. And of course, how are you factoring the digital transformation at this time?
Thank you very much, Joshua. I hope everybody can hear me. First of all, Yolanda, we have an agreement with Google Arts and Culture. I'm not happy that you did not mention Nigeria on that. We have a unique set of problems that we have to deal with. No matter how much digital transformation occurs, if the enabling laws of the country that allow the oil industry to grow, the banking industry to grow, the telecoms industry to grow, are not in place, no matter how much money or how much digital support you give certain industries, it will be difficult for them to achieve the growth that you need. Secondly, we have always had a human capital deficit here, and this is an opportunity. I mean, I'm speaking on the negatives, but they are all opportunities to do amazing things. The human capital requirements in terms of training are now even more important, especially with the digital trainings that are required, marketing skills. I mean, Google knows who is looking for what. Google knows who is selling what. So we can approach almost a perfect market. You would normally hear that are lacking in Nigeria are probably things like security and roads. But in tourism, there are also things like tourism satellite accounts that are still pending that are required to make the digital impact really something that we can call recovery bound for the Nigerian tourism industry. We must reimagine life. It's not life post-COVID or anything like that. It's reimagined living. You've got to just see it in a completely different perspective from all the stakeholders in the tourism ecosystem. A few days ago, I heard that Dubai had changed their laws on alcohol and their laws on unmarried couples occupying hotel rooms. Now that is fundamental. ICT can now drive tourism recovery when such fundamental issues, laws are changed to facilitate how the people can transform Dubai. I mean, just as an example, In Nigeria, funding is also a critical issue. Tourism doesn't like expensive money. Tourism likes single-digit interest rates. Interest rates are up to 27% here. We cannot expect traditional recovery patterns in terms of post-economic collapse of the world, banking system, the stock market, post 9/11, etc. We cannot expect those traditional recovery strategies that we had then to help now. So what does the digital spectrum revolution offer us? In Nigeria, we have been fortunate in that we have seen the discovery of oil and the legal framework and how that changed Nigeria's fortunes. We've seen it in banking. We've seen it in telecoms. MTN is the largest telco here, and probably the telco market in Nigeria is probably the most valuable in Africa. And if you look at all those things, they've been driven to some extent by technology. How do we implement with the baseline problems I have underlined in terms of government policy, in corporate governance, in human capital, in infrastructure, etc.? How do we translate that is the challenge we are currently facing. Now, irrespective of the comparative advantages that Miami, Disneyland, London, South Africa, Kenya may have had, the whole world came to a standstill for 6 to 8 months, and we don't really know how much longer we have. It's been an experience that, I mean, I call COVID the teacher of 2020, the best teacher of 2020. We have learned so much just by standing still. Now, in standing still, we have had opportunities to rejig certain things. And I think technology has been incredible in allowing us to survive that long lockdown period. Now, post the lockdown period, what do we do with it? Big data is amazing. It's amazing in a country where there are 200 million people, and the digital penetration in terms of access to digital platforms has many benefits. I have seen the growth of digital tourism entrepreneurs who have little or no assets and have made more of a difference in the Nigerian tourism industry than the traditional establishments. If any of them is watching, kudos to them. We have an Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement that is also riding on something like what we are all doing here. If we don't get certain things right before that agreement comes into place, we could have a problem. If we get it right, the recovery of Africa, especially with the lower COVID mortality figures than the rest of the world, I will be specific, like South America, Europe, and the Americas, it could drive our recovery in an exponential manner that if we are only seeing 5% of the global tourism trade in Africa, now we could see 10, 15% in a couple of years. Because where would you invest money? Where you can go and see it. And with our low, I mean, Nigeria is still under 2,000 in a population of 200 million in terms of COVID mortality. So that is a possible upside in terms of what we are talking about as tourism recovery. I think I may have overshot my time. Hello?
Yeah.
Moderator,
I think it's great. Yeah. So I will come back to you to ask other questions, but these are really great insights. which you gave. And of course, I agree that culture actually has to be put inside when we're talking about integrating the digital revolution in what we're talking about. And of course, Concordia platform actually brings people together to collaborate. And I'm happy that you are in touch with Google. And of course, like, I think this should happen from here in terms of saying what you could do together through some of the activities of Google, some of the trainings they are currently running across African countries. So I think that will really be a great one. Yeah, so I will move on to Naledi. We all know that job is actually really critical in the ecosystem, especially for every young person. And one of the areas that has really been hit much is actually the loss of job in the tourism industry. Like for some of us, we could work from home, but for those who are working with airlines, there's no way you can fly your aircraft from home. You can't do some things from home. So jobs are lost during this time. So my question to you would be, as the tourism industry is actually a major source of jobs, which has been affected during this time, what can be done to support especially small businesses at this time in the tourism industry during this time? And what are the key things we need to do to upskill the staffs of these small businesses?
Well, I think obviously some of the solutions are going to come from both, government entities and the private sector. I think at the simplest level, you're seeing a lot of governments in terms of actual financial support to keep businesses afloat. That's on a global level. It's across the continent. The disbursement of such funds is another story, but I think that that's critical. Secondly, when we're talking about the importance of digitization and how small and medium enterprises are going to stay relevant and sort of adapt to the environment, I just think it's interesting that we're talking about a lot of the same things that we've always been talking about. So when we're talking about big data and analytics and the need for SMEs to embrace digitization, those are conversations that were taking place long before COVID. Now they've just become critically important, because for those small businesses that are either on the verge of going out of business or trying to maintain relationships with clients and customers and with their other business partners, if they don't have the infrastructure or the digital foundations, they're honestly going to be lost in the shuffle. And what I actually fear is that as we're all embracing technology and digitization, we're not talking about the infrastructure. We're not talking about bandwidth and how expensive it is, because those very small and medium enterprises that we're trying to save, do they actually have access to all of the digital training that's going on, to the digital conversations that are taking place to save their businesses? Because that's some of the information that we're getting as we, talk to small businesses, individuals who work within the sector, as they're trying to reinvent themselves in this space. And so I think in terms of support, it's coming from the government side, it's coming from the private sector, it's from programs such as that Google is doing in terms of providing training skills. But again, we've been talking about this. Now, how are we really going to execute in a way that is going to be valuable and sustainable over a considerable amount of time? And I think that for us, we sit in a unique place that we sort of interface with all of the parties, SMEs, DMOs, private sector and what have you. So it's about information sharing. How do we facilitate? How do we get information about all the programs that Yolanda, is working with Google? What's that information? What are some tools that are there that TravelStart may be offering to even the trade? Because the trade is looking for more information as well. We sit in North America. I'm actually sitting in South Africa now, but ATA technically is headquartered in North America. And, we're hearing that now is such an opportunity as people are sitting still in a way that they haven't, to educate themselves. And I think Africa, uniquely than any other geographic region, uses travel experts more than any other region. In fact, it was growing before COVID. So how are we educating those partners on what Africa has to offer? How, what are the new products? How are we accessing new groups? Because I think if we increase market share, that saves businesses. If we highlight new products, that introduces new business products to new audiences. And I think that that's going to be critical moving forward, is really looking at our marketing strategy, digital platforms, and going back, I know it's the buzzword, but really what does collaboration look like moving forward? Again, and that too, we've been talking about, but I'm starting to see much more strategic engagement than say in January, in a much more meaningful manner. And I think the key is just to make sure that we sustain the same level, keep this energy up, so to speak, well beyond the next 3, 6, 9, and 12 months.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And still on you, Naledi, I would like to ask specifically if you would want to speak to specific skills that are required in the tourism industry, especially for the small businesses. One of the key things that we are looking at is to give people action point on the what are these critical skills at this time that small businesses need to actually take some of their staff through at this time that will help them to retain their jobs and, of course, help the sector to recover quickly as possible.
Well, I think what's so critical, as it's been mentioned, people are still searching. They're still looking for inspiration for travel. So if you're not engaging in those conversations, you're going to be left behind. So I think what's critical is understand how Google works, understand how Google search works, understand how Facebook works. What are those marketing tools? And for so many of them, I know Facebook has a program, I know Google has a program that provide free skills, or, in terms of learning the platform and how to use it for your business, that they need to start training on those platforms. Those are where conversations are taking place. What's happening on Facebook and Instagram? How do you introduce your products or your business to new audiences? That's critical right now. And I would say it's not even just for SMEs, but even when you're looking at DMOs, I would argue that a lot of DMOs are not adequately leveraging platforms in a way that they should be. So how are they spending their marketing dollars across digital platforms? I think it's critical for them also, because I think in elevating their destination, that's going to generate interest in the destination, which will ultimately trickle down to the SMEs and their businesses and products. In speaking to some DMOs, occasionally I ask them certain things about KPIs and things like this, and I can tell you that their digital agencies are failing them, right? Speaking from an old digital agency background, we're only going to give you what you ask for from a digital agency perspective. So if you're not asking the right questions, you're not going to get the right answers, and the work is not going to be done. So I think even on that DMO level, there's significant strategic marketing training that needs to take place across the platforms. And then on the SME level, like, how do you come up in search? Yolanda mentioned people are looking for remote areas. So what do you need to do that if you have a product that fits that? How do you appear in that search result so somebody may explore your offering? Make sure your website is up to date and has, appealing visual assets. If you're on Instagram, make sure that there's strong call to actions if people want to look for, additional information. Like, all of these things, I think are critical sort of digital 101 skills that people need to make sure. It's almost as if there's a checklist that needs to be created, website, social media, search, all of those things, and make sure that you have your ducks in a row, and then you're constantly engaging. It takes work, effort, and resources, but I think it's absolutely necessary for the SMEs to survive through COVID.
Oh, wow, that's a great one. Thank you so much for that. I will move over to Bukky, and after Bukky, I would like David to also say something about this specific question. So Bukky, people want to travel. I personally want to go to South Africa, which I already planned to go in May, but things happened, it changed. So at this point, I know TravelStart has done quite a lot of work. I use TravelStart most time, and I see how they follow me via email all the time. It happens. So how do we, as organizations that own platforms for travel, how do we build, restore confidence for travelers around this time across Africa? You mentioned something earlier about the number of COVID tests that need to be taken in some region. Sometimes I'm afraid of traveling because I don't know if I want to travel for 3 days, if I will be held somewhere for 2 weeks for me to stay, when I only have 3 days to travel. Yeah, so how are we going to restore the confidence in people who want to travel like at this time across Africa? And of course, the second question, what role do digital content and messaging, just like every other person has said, would play in this very imperative development? And like I said, I would like David also to react to that after our booking.
Okay, so I'm actually going to need you to take the 2 questions again. But first, I do want to say something which is similar to what Naledi and Yolanda was saying. Look, as much as we make we stress the importance of data, at the end of the day, if you put a number in front of somebody and they don't know how to interpret it or they don't understand the meaning behind it, it's just a number. And, you know, Naledi, I totally understand what you mean about digital agencies. I have an agency background as well. But at the end of the day, if you ask one question, you're going to get exactly that answer. And I think sometimes when people go to Google, they ask a specific question, they get an answer, and then they're not happy with it. But maybe you're not happy with the question. So kind of like the DG Coker said, I think it's about, we have to reimagine life. We have to reimagine the question. What is really the question? So when you ask me about how do we restore confidence into the ecosystem, my question to myself is, how do I get people to go outside again? Like, just go outside. Like, if you think about what COVID has done to each of us, I mean, pretty much everybody is in a room or in a house somewhere and not in an office. I think if we had this about 6 to 8 months ago, first we'd be like, oh, where is the summit and how can we all fly there? That's one. And then point 2 would be, well, I can dial in, but I would have dialed in from my office. Now everybody is at home. How do I get people to just leave their house confidently? As in, like, I leave my house, get into my car, and maybe just go to a restaurant. Like, just something like, it's literally that basic when you think about the fear that has been generated because of COVID. In Nigeria, so I'm in Lagos, you know, I'll tell you, when restaurants first opened up, that first weekend, I was like, I am not going. I'm going to let people be, you know, some early innovators. I'm going to let them go out. I'm going to let them explore. I'm going to let them see how it is. And then I'm going to go the next week. Because if we don't see any increase in cases, then, you know, I'm not going to be the test bunny. I think the same thing applies to planes as well and going to another destination. So aside from the fact of, you know, what will I do when I'm there? I think for us as a travel agency, it's actually information. You cannot overshare enough. I cannot tell you the rules enough. And what is incredibly difficult in this space is that the rules change every single day. You wake up one day and another rule has changed. You know, before I came onto this session today, you know, we got the great news from the Minister of Aviation that now Air France, KLM, and Lufthansa will be allowed to fly from December. 24 hours ago, that was not the case. Now that is the case today at almost 3 o'clock, it's almost 4 o'clock Lagos time. What does that mean for all the passengers that had flights? So things are constantly in flux. So for us, what we try to do is try to provide as much accurate information as possible, try to write blogs, try to show people who are on vacation. Geoffrey mentioned the youth. I feel like I'm a youth. So with the youth, we take pictures, you know, everywhere we're going and showing that it is safe. I think that's how, and then that's how you then sort of craft the messaging. And the messaging basically is, if I can do it, so can you. If Yolanda can go out, then so can I. If Naledi can go out, then so can I. If David can go out, so can I. And just because I touch a surface doesn't mean I'm going to get COVID, right? That's pretty much what you have to continue to reinforce. But at the same time, as stakeholders, we also have to be very responsible in the messaging that we're sending. So I'm not saying go out and lick, you know, the train station or, you know, nothing like that. But you do have to be very responsible in how you promote and get people to travel as well. So it's definitely a balance.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I think it's really important getting the message out in a very appealing way that people will know, okay, when to how to go out, what are the precautions they need to take, which the role of digital platform messaging and all that will help. When people sit back in the house, the only way we can actually get in touch with them is through some of these platforms and things they use for them to read about what is happening outside. That it's not so bad. You can actually still get out and get yourself protected. And it's really important to the recovery of this sector. David, I will give you 1 to 2 minutes to quickly give a reaction to this before I move to Geoffrey.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to agree with everything that's been said. A lot of great content been shared in general. To the specific point on, you know, restoring the confidence, getting that message out there. Yes, yeah, I agree. I don't think you can overshare. Get that information out there. A critical part of this, you know, is getting trusted messages out there. We've seen from lots of the research that you know, people can receive a lot of messaging, a lot of information from governments, from businesses, but the stuff that they really trust is from other travelers. So if you can somehow leverage the information that the people are putting up on their Instagram, on their Facebook, wherever it may be, if you can harness that, show it, and just showcase that is, real travelers are in your destination and they are safe and they're having a great time, that's going to get other people thinking, hey, that's something I want to be part of. It's going back to that cycle, the sharing that then leads on to other people dreaming and sharing that information to potential travelers who will then want to visit your destination, see what's there. The other thing I want to add to it, though, is absolutely use the data that is available from there. A lot of the things that have been talked about, know your market, understand who are the bookies out there who don't want to be the first one to travel visit to your destination, rather than the people who are very keen to travel, who will come. Generally, we are seeing that return coming in the domestic markets, in the short haul markets, the intra-regional markets. Target some of your messages to the short haul first, people that know your destinations better, that can get them much more easily before then moving on to longer haul markets in general.
We have one question from the audience. Before we move to that, I will put this question to Geoffrey very quickly. Innovation is actually critical at this time. So we've spoken about several things, but the actors in the tourism industry need to innovate. We need to evolve into the new reality. So my question is actually, how can the actors in the tourism sector embrace the digital transformation to actually innovate and, of course, to help the recovery come so quick?
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe just to start from where David just finished from, talking about the issue of intra-Africa travel, intra-regional, the short haul and so forth. I think that's quite important. And the reason being is that the African continent has traditionally been a market for the Western markets. And we're increasingly seeing what COVID is teaching us, that we really need to start looking at alternative markets. One of the markets that we're seeing, as I mentioned before, is a domestic market. The reason being is that 80% of people travel within their regions. And I was seeing the case of the EU, for example. One of its recovery strategies is develop inward-looking strategies. It's not looking at long haul or whatever. So the immediate solution is to look at those inward-looking policies and so forth. And that's why it's very important. The level of intra-regional travel within Africa is at only 46%, so way below the global average of 80%. So this provides a lot of opportunities for people wanting to tap into this market. I think we've seen that Nigeria, South Africa, some of the largest markets in terms of outbound tourism and so forth. But of course, we really need to develop appropriate products for these markets. One of the reasons I'm saying this and talking about the issues of innovation is that there's need to shift away. And there's a question I've seen here that Central Africa about developing tourism and so forth. There's really need to shift away from the traditional way of thinking of tourism. Now, the reason being is that when you think about Africa, what really comes into mind is nature-based tourism. And I think this is really something that is really a disadvantage to us, because nature-based tourism in reality is a homogeneous product in Africa. Let me compare Tanzania and Kenya, for example, and Uganda and Rwanda. They tend to have similar products. So it's very, very difficult to use that to promote tourism within Africa. But one of the things that we've been promoting within ECA is the fact that we never really think of our cities as destinations. Yet, when you look at the Western world, these are major destinations. And I think this is where now service providers could think about developing products that really tap into this. And just a quick one, what my colleague from Nigeria said. Incidentally, I'm actually here in Naivasha working on a workshop. We're in a workshop developing the tourism satellite accounts for Kenya, which are actually almost pretty much advanced. And without the TSS, as my colleague mentioned, is that you really don't have any information that informs policy. And I think this is really what we need to be emphasizing, that we really, and that provides critical data to inform policy. For example, what's the level of government investment in the tourism sector, and all these sort of things can be informed by such tools and so forth. So I think these are some of the opportunities that we are seeing increasingly, Joshua. And I hope I've addressed some of the questions there and so forth. And I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Geoffrey. I think we have about 4 minutes to go. So I will give each person about 30 seconds to actually say something about the question we have in the chat. I would go to the second part of the question because you touched on the early part of it. So, and I will start with Folorunsho Coker in 30 seconds. Do you think that the recovery period would be a good time to develop new nature-based tourism opportunities in this country, like the Central America that was mentioned in the question? Can you react to that very quickly in 30 seconds? If you're speaking, we can hear you.
Absolutely. I think this is an opportunity for us to do incredible things in this incredible times. I think that the emerging economies have not developed these disruptive technologies that we are being offered, but we will, because of this is virgin territory, we will adapt very quickly, we will change very quickly, and the pronounced effect globally of technology will be seen in these developing economies. We have a few challenges, but definitely, yes, it will be fantastic to see. I mean, this is the test bed. We didn't develop them, but this is the test bed where you will see it work. I mean, not to focus on the negative, if you look at what social media did in Nigeria in the last month, that tells you the power of a smartphone. And there are 100 million smartphones in the hands of a demography between 18 and 35. Now that's a negative. Turn the positive on. Incredible opportunities. I am glad to be alive in this time and to be seeing this happen in my time. I am open to collaborations, not competitions. It's the season for us to collaborate. It's the season for us to learn from each other. It's the season for us to understand that the growth of Africa is Pan-African. It's us doing it for each other on this continent. If you can fly, come and fly for us. If you can run
Okay, I'll take it from there. Thank you so much. Yeah, but it's actually great having your thought. Thank you so much. I think we have another question, so which I want Bukky to actually say in 30 seconds. As companies develop their digital platform, how can they assure the quality of the content and functionality of the platform? Very quickly, so I'll move to other speakers.
Hello.
Okay, so my very quick answer to that is you cannot outsource your brand and the soul of your company to another company. If you want to assure the quality of a platform, go and test it out yourself. If they tell you that it is blue, go and make sure that it is blue. If they tell you that there is 1 million there, go and make sure that there's 1 million. You cannot outsource the soul and the brand of your company to somebody else. In terms of quality of content, again, that goes back to the standard of your company. What is your standard? What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be seen for? One of the things that I've heard the DG speak before, and what they've worked on with Google Arts and Culture of Nigeria, like if I was outside of Nigeria, in fact, even in Nigeria, I look at it and I'm like, is this the same country, right? That is the standard, and that is the next level that we all need to get to in terms of quality of output. We know what we like from the Western world. We know what we like, and even though the DG said it was negative, it's actually positive what has happened this month in Nigeria. But it is important that you know what that standard is so that you can channel it towards better quality for your business.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I might not be able to go around any longer. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, David. Thank you, Bukky. Thank you, Yolanda. Geoffrey, thank you. Naledi, thank you. And Folorunsho, thank you so much. We have to go now, and I will hand this over to Junior to actually just announce probably the next session or what we need to do next. Thank you, everyone.